Greetings in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. It's a Friday and we want to thank God for the week it has been. We are getting into the weekend, but of course we also need to listen to today's episode of the Family Hour. There's a Friday, and of course every Friday we talk about parenting. So today we are here with an amazing couple to take us through today's topic. I believe that the fact that you're listening to this voice, you're watching this image, you have a reason to say thank you, Lord, at least for the life. No matter what you've not been able to accomplish throughout the week, it's okay. There is hope when a tree is cut, that it will sprout again. So keep your hope alive. Edrine Mukalazi is my name, your host today. Of course, standing in for Claire Gwenje, who will be with us next time. But of course, with us at the Nsubugas, Mrs. Sarah Nsubuga and Mr. Edrine Nsubuga. It's a pleasure having both of you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sarah Nsubuga will greet us first. Ladies first. Kindly greet our viewer.
Hello. It's an honor to be here. My name is Sarah Nsubuga. I'm married to this gentleman here, tall, dark, and handsome. We've been married for 15 years, and we have 4 children. Yes. We have 4 children, and I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Nsubuga.
Good morning. My name is good evening. My name is Edrine Nsubuga, married to Sarah. I'm glad to be here, very honored to be here, actually privileged to be here. It's my first time on TV.
Okay. We are glad that we have both of you here, and we are excited to learn from you. Today we are looking at building a reading culture as a family, and they are, of course, it's the reason we have a family here. We have Arthur and Sarah. But before we get into our discussion, someone would want to, you say you've been married for 15 years,
yes.
And the 15 years of marriage don't look. Someone would want to know, what has made your marriage journey rejuvenated, that you look younger than the years? I'll start with Sarah, and then Arthur will tell us the story later.
I think, honestly, it's God. Just having a relationship with God and walking with Him together and as individuals. All the troubles that we go through, we have someone to take them to encourage us, to guide us through. So when marriage can be, you're married to someone who's not your relative, someone who grew up very differently from you. So there can be some friction, but through that friction, going to God and asking for wisdom, for patience. He's been very patient with me. He has endured me because the Lord gives us the strength to be able to be kind to each other. And yeah, so depending on Him for strength to love the person that He has given me.
Okay. Mr. Nsubuga, kindly share with us your journey as well, your story.
I think on top of what she said,
Yes.
We have to be practical with God. He gives us His word. You live in His word, but also when He instructs in His word, you have to live out the word on a daily basis. And you have to live in obedience. We talk about the fruits of the Holy Spirit, sing about them, but you have to actually live the fruit of the Holy Spirit every day in your marriage for you to actually keep on growing and staying young, if I may say that. But also other small things that you think about, like eating well, exercising. They are minors, but they're also important to stay in shape. Yeah.
Well, now we are talking about building a reading culture as a family. There's a statement that disgusts each time I personally listen to it, that if you want to hide something from an African, then keep it in a book. That's really demoralizing. It's something that no one wants to listen to. However, sometimes you should say it's reality, much as it sounds a little rude and unfair, but very many people don't want to read. I know someone was given a book, a very good book with a lot of good information, and truth be told, you read it for me, and then you'll tell me what is in there. But of course, this is something that wasn't probably introduced to them when they were growing, and so you realize they cannot easily adapt to it when they are now of age. So we now want to get into that topic and see how parents can support their children to build this culture in them. But of course, starting with probably, I'll start still with Mrs. Nsubuga. Now that you're closer to me, you'll always get the first shots. Can you share with us your earliest memories? Of reading, of being read to as a child.
Okay, of being read to as a child, I remember my father reading to me. It's a memory that came. He would read us stories before we would go to bed. And I remember especially the book called Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters, about two daughters. One was very nice, one was very mean, and they both wanted to marry the king, and the king, of course, chose the nice one. So I still read, I have the book, and I read it for my own children. So I remember that. And of me personally reading, I remember just, there are those levels, when you read the small books, the Peter and Jane, then you move to another level. I think there are about 2 instances that I remember being moved up to read novels, especially novels. I think I was in P7, where I called them grown-up books. My uncle gave me a Jeffrey Archer collection of short stories called To Cut a Long Story Short. And it opened up my world to grown-up reading. I was reading, Pesetas, those ones. But now I was like, I can read a real novel by Jeffrey Archer, John Grisham, Yeah, so just I remember.
Okay. Mr. Nsubuga,
yeah.
Your memories, childhood memories, when you were introduced to reading, or when they were reading for you?
They never read to me. My parents were typical Africans, oral. Well, they will tell you stories about many things, but not necessarily reading from a book. But remember, my father used to make us read newspapers for him when we were in the car, probably he's going to work and, tagging along. He'll give us newspapers to read for him as early as maybe P1 or P2, which actually taught us how to read. But also my mother picked up from one of my teachers that I loved books. I used to read out of Luganda books, Nambi and Chintu and a few other books. And she bought for me a lot of books. If you know those Victorian writers, classics novels, now she bought abridged versions for a 7-8-year-old. So I read a lot of them, A Tale of Two Cities, Thomas Sawyer, and all those books. I read so many of them, the abridged versions. Yeah. But as I went along growing up, of course, I picked up the much thicker versions. By age 13, I was reading novels, those classics from the Victorian era. So I was reading those books by age 13. And of course, when I went to high school, there are a lot of best-setters. I got introduced to Sidney Sheldon by 14. I was reading Sidney Sheldon novels. So it's been growing up around reading things, newspaper articles, newspapers, then the magazines from Kenya, which had comics. I remember Lance Pierman from Kenya. Then, of course, Asterix, Obelix, Tintin, Reader's Digest. Yeah. There was a lot to read all the time. I don't come from a house which reads, but somehow there are things to read, and I picked interest and I kept on reading them. Yeah. Wow.
Now, of course, we are talking about reading and reading and reading. Someone would ask themselves, why is it important anyway? How does reading help my child? If I introduce them to reading at an early age, how will it benefit them?
Of course, you can't learn without reading. Anybody who's learned something and learned it well has read it somewhere. So talk about basic things like a manual. If you've learned how to operate, let me say, a telephone or a TV or something, you've had to read the manual. So if you learn how to read from an early age, you'll be able to actually follow instructions and perfect something. Anything that you want to learn in life has to come from reading. Less from oral and more from reading. Typical example, the Bible. If you're to grow in your walk with Christ, you can't depend on someone's. As someone can't be retracted easily, as someone can't be corrected, and we've had so many sermons with errors, but the Bible is text. So it's been edited, it's been improved as they get more resources. So you're able to read, and you can read again, and then you're able to do what you've read from that particular text.
Yeah.
So when you read, you can apply what you've read, and there's a chance to read again and to reflect on something. So when a person learns how to read from an early age, they learn how to learn many things because they can read. Come from the Bible, come from anything else. If you learn how to read, you can learn how to apply, and you can grow and improve in your spiritual walk, in your skills. Any skills that you learn along life is because you're reading from somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, you can compare, I can bring you to, let me say, a mechanic. There's a difference between a mechanic in Chiseka and a mechanic who works for Toyota. Because the mechanic who works for Toyota has learned how to read instructions. They can disassemble a car engine and put it back together without a challenge. But Chiseka has learned how to do the work by watching and observing. So it's possible they'll make an error somewhere and your car moves away with a leak, or they'll misplace the parts because they haven't learned how to follow procedures, because they don't know how to read. So reading teaches you, reading equips you, reading gives you a skill that you can live with in life.
Yeah, it also gives you knowledge. It gives you learn stuff from reading, but it also improves your vocabulary. I mean, the more you read, the more you read different things. I envy Arthur. He's very wide-read in the sense that he can read politics and theology and science and math, and he's a global thinker, so he can do all those things. But it gives you a lot of knowledge and gives you vocabulary to express yourself in different circumstances. So it's important to read, because then you know how to express yourself. You know, when you're looking for one and you're like, there's this word, it's like this is what it means, but you can't, because you've not been exposed to that vocabulary to express yourself clearly when you're talking. So when you read, you learn more words, you learn more expression, you learn how people communicate, and you're able to speak with more clarity.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, that takes us to the next topic. The next question. What reading traditions does your family have?
Reading, it's our default entertainment
Yeah.
for us and our 4 children. Yes. The default is a book. Whenever someone wakes up, I remember one time waking up one Sunday morning, I wake up early, and when I had sat down after making breakfast, I found all 4 children sitting in their chairs reading, and I was like, this is what I've always wanted. So it's a default. If you're bored, actually you're not allowed to say you're bored in our home, because if you're bored, that means you're boring. You have to figure out a way. Yeah, there are so many things to do. There are things you can play outside. There are so many books here to read. So it's our default. When you say tradition, it's what we do. We read. It's TV and screens are limited, although now with school sometimes they send homework and online and everything, and it kind of disorganizes a few of our traditions, but still the default entertainment for all of us is a book.
So there are specific places where your reading is encouraged. For example, on the dining, or maybe in the living room, or in this particular place where we should read from.
I've seen my children sneak books into the toilet.
By the way, even some of them have been punished at school. For example, a teacher was teaching and she had understood the concepts already. So she just pulled out a book and began reading. In class.
Yeah. So there's anywhere is you read, because even like when we are going out, I remember recently we were going for Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames, and I knew that the wait time was going to be a lot. I said, you know what to do? We're going to wait for a long time. You have to carry a book, because there's no phone, there's no tablet, there's no nothing. So they each carried a book. I remember my daughter actually carried 2. Our second born carried 2, because she was about to finish the one she was reading, and she didn't want to finish it and then have nothing to read. So she carried 2 books. Yeah.
So, Mr. Nsubuga, do you choose these titles for them? Like, which criteria do you follow to recommend books to these children?
Of course, the books are normally age specific. They're, like I mentioned, when I was growing up, the Victorian classics were, my mother bought for me a version for an 8-year-old. So the book must be tailored to a particular age before the person reads it. Of course, we don't read things which are against the faith that we hold. I'm not going to bring a witchcraft book or something like that, give it to a child, you know. We try to stick to those which share our values. There may be general things about life, but we must be able to share our values. So it must be toned down to the edge, but also must be sharing our values. But also our children read ahead of their age.
Yeah.
There's something like a reading age for a child.
Mm.
So actually, all of them are beyond their reading
About
ages.
4 or 5 years above.
Yeah. So now for like our 8-year-old, he's about 11 or 12 now in terms of reading. So he gets books for a typical 12-year-old because he's read and he has the ability to understand a book that a 12-year-old reads. So they must be age specific and they must be resonate with the values that we hold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are lots of books. I think I vet the books more, especially with my eldest who loves to. She goes through a book a day. I remember I bought her 3 books and I thought I had done so much, but by the next day she had read all 3 of them, and they were not small books. So there are some books where it looks the title. They're even children's writers, and you think, oh, this is a children's writer, but the content in there is, for example, it's talking about a lot of violence or being mean or bullying a child or things like that. So it's Google is our friend. When you don't understand an author, it's good to Google them and see, okay, what does this person write about, and kind of know, because there are some books which are very popular that my children are not allowed to read.
So do you have a criteria to evaluate the effectiveness of this reading in the lives of these children?
Yeah, I mean, you see, first of all, you see their writing improve.
Oh, yeah.
Our second born is a typical, all our children lean towards the sciences, except me, our last born, we don't know, but most likely he's only 3. But the eldest 3 lean towards the sciences. And so our second born in particular is very scientific in how she thinks. She's very, if they ask her something and that's implied in a text, she will struggle. She'll be like, it's not there in black and white. And so we encouraged her to read more because she was struggling to write. She wasn't writing compositions and stories well. So you told her you have to read, because reading goes along with writing. You have to read so that you can improve your vocabulary, improve your style of writing, be exposed to different styles of writing so that you kind of hone the skill and start to write well. And when she started reading more, her writing now is amazing. It's fantastic, actually. She just sat for her final exams in primary, and the teacher was saying she is doing very well in her writing. And well, like 3 years ago,
English writing was. She was like, no.
She still doesn't like English, but
she's excelling.
She's excelling in it. Why? Because she increased her reading. She's able. So that's an effect that we've seen. She increased her reading. She did better with reading. So her writing is much better.
Okay, Mr. Nsubuga, what tips do you have, especially for creating a conducive reading space at home?
Of course, the first tip is get rid of the TV. I'm sorry for those who are into paid TV, but we haven't, and I will not name the company, but we haven't paid for TV for over a decade.
Oh.
We just switched off paid TV, so we don't watch paid TV. Actually, somebody came to visit and thought that our TV is for decoration because it's never on.
She had visited us. She had been in our home for 3 years. She'd come in and out, and she had never seen the TV on, so she thought it didn't work.
So get rid of TV. Well, limit it as much as possible. It shouldn't be the default entertainment. Because they get to watch a movie every now and then on a laptop or something, but that is now once in a while. And if you're on holiday, we give them like probably 45 minutes to an hour to watch. But the rest of the day is for other things. Read, go outside and play. That's important. So you have to get rid of the things that make your life easy. Just go and watch TV. No, you have to get rid of that kind of mentality. Then, of course, buy the books. My mother, I told you, just throw the books at me. Buy the books and make it interesting. By the way, I don't read for them. They find me boring. But she's a very good reader. She's such a good reader, such that when she's reading, I also sit and listen. And strangely, it's the same book that she reads for our last born. Yeah. There's a story called
Cups for
Sale. She's read that story for all the boys, but even me who's 48. I enjoy it to this date. So someone has to read. One of you must have the ability to read and entertain in an entertaining way. So when they listen to you reading in a way that is entertaining, they also pick interest and want to read. Our 3-year-old who's making 4 in November doesn't know how to read, of course. He's still too young. But the guy litters the sitting room with books. Yeah. I am going to read my book. He pulls out a book, and he's just flipping. Of course, some of them he knows the story because the story has been told to him. But now he's gotten involved and he's interested because she reads to him, and he sees other people reading. Whenever something is happening in the house, he also wants to do. Recently, his siblings were doing experiments of science at school. He also began doing experiments because of what he saw happening in the house. So get rid of the TV and the gadgets, limit them as much as possible, and buy the books. Buy the books, keep them at home, books which are age appropriate, but also read as an individual. Read, let them see you reading.
Not on your phone.
Not on your phone. Read an actual paper. Yeah. But also read for them in a way that is entertaining. They will love the reading. And that culture begins to grow from that point. Yeah.
Mr. Nsubuga, he has told us, you are a wonderful reader. What tips do you have for a mother out there who probably they want to read, but they don't even know how to make it interesting to their children?
Think about how you would want to listen to a story. If I'm reading a book, I don't want... A boring writer reads in monotone, just... So if you read a book like that to a child, it's not going to be interesting. So if the book says, for example, in Cups for Sale, there's a part of the book that says that peddler woke up and he looked to the right of him. So with my son, I say, right, left, back. It's just interest, have that, do what the book is saying. Natural. Yeah, if it says hop, try and get up and hop. Tell them, can you hop for me? How do you hop? You don't have to just stick to just what the book says. And then, because they're a child who doesn't know how to read yet, will look at the pictures. The pictures are more interesting than the words because they can't understand what the words say. So if the story is saying something about the bear and there's a picture of a bear, so can you see the bear? Do you see the red ribbon on the bear? Well, show me the red ribbon on the bear. That makes them get involved and actually be like, this is actually very interesting. So just think about what would make you interested in listening to a story and do that for your child. What would make you feel, oh, this is a fun story? Make it interesting. If it says that the Billy Goat Gruff's voice was very deep, make your voice very deep, have those. If it's very loud, shout. If it's very soft, whisper. All those things make the story interesting. So it's just being, and maybe I'm just more animated and dramatic.
Just dramatic.
I'm more dramatic.
Well, I now see, when you said as well at the beginning, that if someone finds your home boring, then they're the ones who are boring. I now see why this is so. We are taking a short commercial break. When we return, we are going to continue from there. But it's really interesting, and I believe that a parent, you need...